Now we're going to look at using WebSpeed as the wrapper around the Sencha EXT.js application. First we'll look at is what Sencha deployed. We'll go to the web root, the doctors directory, and the two main launching files is index.html and app.js. So let's take a look at those. And we see in index.html, it points to the ext-all.js file, which means it's the entire framework. It points to a little bit of a theme JavaScript library, a style sheet, and then it just runs app.js. App.js is pretty simple as well. It's basically defining the models, stores, the main views, and then launching the application. This all works because of relative pathing. If we look back, we can see that there's a resources directory and an app directory. And it knows where all the models, the stores, and the views are stored. In the store doctor, we'll see the views and different things are all off of this directory. So over in WebSpeed, I created a doctor.web CGI wrapper. It's in a completely different directory. We'll see at the top, it's a standard CGI wrapper. And I'm basically copying and pasting what I saw in the index.html file and the app.js file with a couple of changes. The first change is I'm pointing to my local copy of ext.js framework. It's actually 5.1, not 5.0 like I developed with. It's still the ext.js all, pointing to my local copy of the ext theme crisps JavaScript and the local copy of the CSS file. Before I paste in what was in the app.js file, I'm going to define a variable base URL. By defining it here, I can use it anywhere in the Sencha application. And base URL is made up of the host URL and app URL WebSpeed variables, so that now I have the correct URL to prepend my calls to the web services that's going to be relevant to the proper environment. So if I'm in development, my development URL and app URL will be within the base URL. So we'll do that in a minute. Below that, we have almost exactly what's in app.js. The reason I'm not pointing right to app.js is that I had to make one change, app folder. This is telling Sencha that it is not in the root, that we have a directory of doctors off the root and app to locate the app instead of off the current directory. Without that, we'll get the errors that it couldn't find my viewport.javascript, it couldn't find doctors.javascript, and all those different things. We now have a drweb.w that is ready to be run in WebSpeed to serve up the Sencha ext.js application. I'll go back to my browser. And this time, we're going to go to localhost scripts, the drapi.wsc file for WebSpeed, and my doctor.web is in the Sencha web subdirectory. We'll give that a run. And here's the application running. Click on the load button. We get all of them. Server filter. We have just the modern or new series type. And button fail causes a failure. We now have a base URL variable defined that we can take advantage of in Sencha. So let's give that a try. Come back over to design. And let's go to the button load click method and modify it to use this new variable. So instead of a hard-coded URL, let's put in base URL in front of it. And just so we can see what's going on, let's put up a message box. Message box, another alert. And let's show, copy this to avoid a typo. And this is actually the full URL. So we'll put an alert box of the store.proxy URL that we set and then load the store. Save this, publish it, go back, refresh the screen. Now when we click load, we get the message box. It's going to localhost scripts, .API. Oh, I have an extra slash in there, which won't hurt things, but I should fix that. Web service, .p, and the method is get. And there we go. And sure enough, there is my extra slash that we'll get rid of and save it. So not only can you define a variable to use throughout your application, we also have put in other JavaScript libraries for all of our standard JavaScript calls, because this is just a JavaScript application. So if you already have some JavaScript libraries that have different methods, different functions to do specific things in your application, you can take advantage of them. Just define it here, sort of like we defined the EXTL-all.js, and now your entire Sencha application has access to your standard function libraries. Now, throughout this demonstration, I showed you how to get started with the Sencha EXTJS and the Sencha architect calling WebSpeed arbitrary web services. I didn't necessarily show you best practices. For example, we could talk about web security. I didn't show you the framework that we use with session tokens. Also, in the arbitrary web service, I returned a lot of information about what went wrong. I let a hacker know that the field he passed in the filter was not a field in the database. I'm certain more than one security conscious person wants to hold his hand up right now and say, no, 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 you never want to tell him that. You want to tell him something went wrong, but you don't want to give him this much information. We also talked about adding events to the buttons in Architect. Go back to that. So button load, we added the on button load click trigger right on the button. This makes a lot of sense to me as a progress programmer. There's the button, there's the trigger on it. But in an MVC application, I'll probably want to promote this function up to the controller so that it resides up with the other functions and all that fun stuff that you can learn about if you Google MVC and EXTJS. There's plenty of tutorials. There's plenty of entries in the forums about it. Sencha EXTJS has a free forum. It's loaded with information. Every time I've been stuck, every time I've needed a little bit of help, I've typed it into the search and basically someone's hit it before, someone's asked a question before, or someone's made the same mistake I've made, and you can find the answer. I've mentioned a few times that Sencha provides some build tools so you can build just a portion of the framework that your application needs to run rather than loading the entire framework every time you run an application. That goes a little bit beyond an ABC type of demonstration. I'll cover it a little bit in a supplemental video, but at this point, I'm going to wrap up this demonstration. And if you have any questions, you can always feel free to email me at gwinning@gmail.com. It's gwinning@gmail.com. And thank you.